All right, thank you so much for staying with us. It is Morning Delight, the very last segment of the show, Talk Time, of course, where we have burning national issues. And this morning we are going to the economy. There is hardly any topic we have had since the beginning of this week that does not have any correlation with the economy of Nigeria. I mean, talk about the rising cost of living, talk about what we just discussed on on open access, ASU's saga with the federal government, all boils down to finances, which also boils down to how rich or how able Nigeria is able to meet a lot of its economic expectations. By all indications, from all indices all around the world, most people will tell you that Nigeria is not only blessed, but is rich in not only its natural and mineral resources, but also its human capital as well. But as we have it, sometimes you cannot talk about Nigeria without talking about the world. There has been issues around the world also that has made Nigeria have some of the issues it has now. Talk about pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID. However, the speed at which Nigeria is able to move out of these economic doldrums are some of the concerns and the worries that economists and analysts all have. But solutions we will try to prefer on this segment this morning as we take a look at the economy, economic development in Nigeria, where the problems are, what the challenges are, and also find how we can at least look inward to see how we can get out of this. Recall, Nigeria was able to come out of a recession, even though some people will tell you technically there's some sort going on now with high inflation in the system as we speak. Let's get to our guests now and let's get some context into exactly what some of these problems are and how we can begin to solve them if only the people at the helms of affairs are listening. We have with us this morning Mr. Austin Adigwe, who is an economist, and let's get into the conversation with him this morning. Good morning once again, sir.
Thank you for
and
having
thank
me.
you
Good
so
morning.
much for giving us this short time we always have when we're having conversations like this. But I would like to hear your assessment of exactly where we are now, and I'll be interested in where you start from, considering the many economic issues we're faced with as a country.
Thank you very much. Nigeria is actually faced with multifaceted economic problems, okay, that strikes to the very roots of what every modern economy wants to achieve, which is economic development. But considering even the Human Development Index, you find out that we still have a long way to go. And there are so many reasons why we are far away from achieving our set goals. The basic things, as simple as life expectancy, access to education, decent standard of living, is still a challenge because of the many problems, issues with management of resources, policies inconsistencies, energy cost that is surging now, complete absence or decay of infrastructure. The truth is, as a consumption economy, we're not going to get out of this problem by wishing it away. We must make deliberate efforts to migrate this economy from being a consumption-driven economy to a production-driven economy. That is the only time that we might begin to see some form of hope in the horizon.
The government will tell you that they've been trying. I mean, if we have to look at the diversification drive and all of the well-articulated programs by the monetary policymakers, the fiscal policymakers, telling you that we're trying, especially with agriculture. Let's take agriculture, for example. They'll tell you our economy is largely diversified and all has been done, especially towards agriculture. We'll talk about the other aspects of the non-oil sector later, but let's look at the drive towards agriculture. Is that enough to move us out of a consuming nation to that which produce and also export?
Okay, so basically, let me start from the issue of monetary and fiscal policy. You will also observe that our monetary policies are not always in congress with fiscal policy. You can't be chasing contractionary monetary policy, okay, at the CBN level, while federal government is chasing expansionary monetary policy. It cannot work. It has never worked anywhere. So I'll come to that, but let's even dive into agriculture. Yes, the program of federal government on agriculture, very well celebrated, but how much are we succeeding? What is the quantity of food basket that is coming from these initiatives, coupled with the level of insecurity that pervades the length and breadth of the nation? For the past 4 to 5 years, many farmers have been sacked, I hope you know that, from their farms. So these are issues that, of course, I foresaw a long time ago that will become imminent, and that's what we have today, food crisis. While we are reporting an inflation of 17.7%, food inflation alone is 19.5%. That is legendary. It tells you that Nigerians are resilient. This is enough, okay, to cause serious unrest. Because it tells you now that you can't even feed, the cost of feeding yourself. And why do you feed? You feed in order to stay alive, which means something is after your life. The May report that was released, food inflation is 19.5, non-food inflation was 14.8%. It's not sustainable. This is what is going to drive you into recession eventually. And then you ask, why do we have it like that if we have a system that guarantees food security internally, if we are not still import dependent? Because the problem is that most of our raw material inputs, most of the things we consume in this country are imported. We have very high import elements in our consumption. So any form of exchange rate volatility will hit us. So I don't believe that the agricultural program has actually worked. It's a good start, but it has been rubbished by the spate of insecurity. How many people go to farms? Those that go to farm, according to what we hear, are meant to also part with the hard-earned money for security. So security is directly correlated to economic development. So we must stabilize that space.
Okay, the urban inflationary rate is about 18.24% as at May, the last report. And I am sure this fact, you've also mentioned the fact that inflationary rate overs, especially for food, but 19.2%. This information is before government officials.
Yes.
It's before everyone that does business or advises government on how to move the economy forward. The question is it more about analysis or doing something about the economy? The exchange rate is biting hard. It's hovering at the highest. And of course, foreign airlines, those doing business with us, they find it difficult to repatriate their forex because CBN doesn't have forex to give.
Yeah.
You apply for, businesses apply for perhaps $2,000 for them to get their raw materials for their production in. Government can give them $500 after 3 months. How do you balance this? The CBN has tried to do something in this regard, especially with the forex, but it seems not to be working. How do we marry reality with our monetary policy?
Okay,
or
so
fiscal policy?
Okay, so let me start like this. Nigerian inflationary pressure is not demand pull, and that's where we are getting it wrong. It's not demand pull, it's cost push. And you don't attack a cost push inflation by increasing the cost of credit. UK in 2009 had similar issue. Bank of England did not raise interest rates. They still left it at 0.5%. But what do we see? We try to tackle demand pull inflation, all right? Sorry, cost push inflation with the solutions meant for demand pull inflation.
UK is doing it, US is doing it.
I will tell you. You see, our inflationary pressure is structural. It's structural. And at best, occasioned by the sustained deficit financing we've been doing for over 5 years. So now, the cost of food that we talk about and the cost of items that we're looking at, it's not necessarily because of high demand. It's not because of excess demand. So it's not much of money supply. People don't have this money. You and I know that. No matter the analysis I want to give to you, you know that your purchasing power parity has fallen. So we don't actually have this money. But why is price still escalating? I will tell you, number one, cost of energy. How much is diesel today?
850.
Electricity that was supposed to be the major source of power is now the alternative source of power. So you're setting up your industry and you don't have a huge budget for your generating set. People see you as unserious. People see you as unserious. Now, if you must keep your factory running, you will spend, you know that some manufacturers spend as much as 1 million naira on diesel every day. 1 million naira. So where do you think that 1 million naira is going to? It's going to the
cost of production.
Exactly, cost of production, which will also translate to whatever price you're going to be advised. Recently, we've seen the back and forth to increase energy, not to increase electricity tariff, not to increase so on and so forth. Energy cost is a major input, it's a critical input into our manufacturing processes. And how is government doing, what are the policies to create a kind of safe net for manufacturers? It's non-existent. Number two, you talk about exchange rate volatility. We've talked about it, right? Now, where you can't even plan, and we are import dependent. Apart from what we consume, the raw materials, the major factories you see around depend on imports for their critical material inputs. Some went into contracts with banks to open LC.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, at the rate of 382, as at the time that contract was entered into. Today, they are still refinancing the same LC at 413. That is if they are getting it directly from CBN, or maybe 600 and something. How do you work with that? How do you plan? How then do you even understand what your total cost of production is? Some of these materials have been received in any case, have been used, have been sold, and you're still paying for them at a rate that is outside even your own cash flow. Then you talk about infrastructure. Manufacturers are burdened with providing themselves with everything, including even good access to their factory. If government can do all these basic things and allow investors concentrate on investment on the actual production of goods and services, price will begin to come down. So when CBN rising from the MPC in May, started telling so many stories. They've held this MPR at 11.5% for
over 5 years.
Over two and a half years, thereabouts. Now, okay, they increased it by 150 basis points to 13%. And what was the argument? Inflation. Good. So which means at monetary policy level, you are pursuing contractionary measures. You're using the monetary policy instrument to ensure that you mop up liquidity in the system.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, federal government is pursuing expansionary monetary policy.
But then again,
So
another point CBN made at the time also was because of our electioneering year and the pressure it would begin to put on our currency, the naira, and so it had no other choice at the time to see. Do we see them reverting after, say, the 2023 elections, after all of the monies have been spent, unfortunately, we see dollarize spending in Nigeria. That put pressure on the Naira. Do you see it reverting to where, at least at 11.5%?
If you permit me to laugh, it won't be...
Please don't laugh.
It won't be a bad idea. Because, you see, attributing election year to major economic policies that affects the roots of your economy, the soul of your economy, which is production, is laughable. When are we going to get it right? Election is coming. So you are doing the anyway, they've always been doing the opposite thing anyway. But let's even give into argument that election is coming in 2023. Are you suggesting that politicians won't spend this money? They will spend money, they will spend CBN. However, the money is not going to be spent for productive purposes. These monies are going to enter into hands, okay, without commensurate productivity. And that, again, will worsen the inflationary situation.
We have in the situation.
So that we're going to conduct elections. Why are we elevating election beyond just selecting our leaders?
Okay, that's the politics we play here. But let's look at the two areas of our economy now. We're highly dependent. Main source of forex is oil. We'll leave that conversation to maybe. But let's look at the grower of our economy right now, the non-oil sector. I mean, growing at about 6.08% in real terms, at over 90% to the GDP, ICT, trade, manufacturing, agriculture. And I want to take just two of these sectors, ICT and financial institutions,
yes,
largely private sector driven. If you were to ask a lot of the challenges you mentioned, these people also face these challenges, i.e. structural issues. You're talking electricity. At a point, even telcos had threatened that they will hike their tariffs because of the overhead they've had to accumulate over time. But these people are still the people we can depend on and rely on, growing the economy year on year. If you have to do comparative analysis here, what more do we need to do for this sector to at least be able to move us forward if oil, as it is right now, is no longer reliable?
Thank you very much. I mean, the difference between the results you are churning out in tech and financial services and those of public sector is efficiency. The people in the private sector are not like more intelligent, more focused than those in the public sector, but it's just sheer efficiency. Yes, of course, tech is the way to go. Everything now about the economy, everything about us revolves around technology. So we cannot close our eyes to that. And of course, you know that a sector or an industry that is created by need, demand, will always do well. Will always do well. So I'm not surprised that they are growing despite the downturn in the economy as a whole. But you could still have some sectors that will still be kicking, okay, showing positive growth month on month, year on year. So the technological sector, of course, will require a lot of support. Will require a lot of support. See, support doesn't necessarily need to come by way of funding. Just create the enabling environment.
Okay, they have the environment. From all of your analysis,
yes,
the environment doesn't seem to be perfect yet.
Yes.
And we're able to make as much. We know what the ICT is doing and what market share it controls, even just regionally,
yes,
not to talk of all over the world. And we know how much interest it has been for foreign investors to come into our ICT space, you know, buying over startups from our young techies. Yeah. And these are not with any support. With some form of support, or not total support, from the government as we speak. CBN will say they're doing so much. The Lagos state government has also done a lot, but we're talking 36 states in Nigeria, plus the FCT, and just one state, just one agency, are just the ones who are standing by and standing with these people.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Of course, that's also in my last submission that they need to be supported, because if they are doing this much without good support, without the enabling environment, just imagine what you will unleash if the right business environment is put in place. Just imagine the potentials that will be converted into figures, into naira and kobo, if the right support is given to this sector.
Okay, another sector that in recent years has helped us move beyond the conventional medium of business is MSMEs, and that to a large extent, when we debated the other time, was one of the critical factors that really helped our economy, contributing about 49% to the GDP, employing over 59 million people at one point.
Yes.
That's the stats available. How do, because virtually everyone now said it's not what your country can do for what you can do for your country, what you can do for yourself even after leaving school. It's not about the employment. Young people into fashion, into dressing, into music, these non-oil sectors. How do we, in the face of our reality, foreign exchange, some of these MSMEs, these small and medium scale enterprises, don't really need foreign exchange to do your shoe, your this thing. Just you can locally get these materials. How do we fan up this sector that is the way to go? Even in the United States, the medium enterprise.
Yes, you're right. Of course, that's the bedrock. That's the life wire of every economy. Small scale enterprises. They are the major employers of labor, and just like you rightly said, their contribution is enormous. Now, but even if you want to insulate them from FS crisis and this and that, they are also facing their own challenges. They are also facing their own challenges. They are groaning under the same cost that we've just talked about. That barber by the road corner needs electricity. You really can't tell. You may not be able to fathom what 24 hours or even 20 hours electricity will do to the business of just a barber by the roadside. Constant electricity supply. He may have to employ a friend to join him because there's light, everybody is coming there for service. All right? But this same barber is struggling under the same energy cost. The same barber is struggling under multiple taxation that we see all around us. The same barber is struggling. So the business environment is just not conducive. Look, yesterday I was going through the social media. I stumbled on a story, a particular hotel in Ikorodu that employs about 150 people. What I'm saying just happened recently. A federal government agency went into the premises, arrested both the staff, the customers, confiscated their phones, moved away the vehicles, okay, created a lot of sin. Now, the owner, of course, was speaking to Punch, like, I had no other option than to lay off over 100 staff. And as it is now, I don't see any future for the business. That is a business that government ought to have supported. Even if there are issues that are needed to be investigated, there are more decent and civilized way of doing that without others knowing. So I'm just telling you that the MSMEs might still be contributing, but what we are saying is that's their full potential. Or are they just contributing based on how limited the space or the scope at which they are operating is?
Thank you very much, Mr. Austin Adigwe, for joining us this morning. Thank you for, I don't know, putting petrol in the fire or trying to allay our fears about the economy.
No, you see, the truth is this. It's better we just tell ourselves the simple truth. There is no point. I'm not one to come and paint a very good picture, okay, in